Hello, I'm Pat, WA0TDA, and we're going to give you a little update today on the Handiham remote base stations W0EQO in northern Minnesota and W0ZSW here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. We're using a different type of software than we had used when we first started the stations. That was the W4MQ software by Stan Schroeder. Now we're using the RemoteHams.com software called the RCForb client, and this comes from RemoteHams.com. Go to RemoteHams.com, and this is the page that will come up right away. You should sign up, and then go down to step 2, download the RCForb client. And I recommend that you skip the public alpha, if there is one up here, and go to the stable version. This is going to be a Windows program. You can buy an Android version for your smartphone for under $10, and the Windows version is free. You are welcome to donate and encouraged to do so. Okay, once you get the client software installed, you'll find that you get a station list in something called the lobby. Here I have a number of stations listed that come up to the top because I've put them in favorites, and we're just going to take a quick look at W0ZSW, Handiham Club of Minnesota. And we have to do that by clicking on it, double click, and the software brings up a welcome screen. And there might be something that the owner of the station has put on that welcome screen that you need to know. This tells you where to send reports of problems, or if you have questions. It gives you a little bit of operating information, and you can just click OK to get rid of that. Now I should say that guest operation is allowed on many stations listed in the lobby list on RemoteHams.com RCForb client software, but not all stations do allow you to tune the radio as a guest. You may have to be a registered user or a club member. In this case, we can go ahead and tune as a guest if we want, but the software already knows, since I've registered it, that it is a user. And I've got my call sign down here, and there's a letter A that shows I'm an administrator. Okay, let's bigify this. Hang on, there we go. And we can see that on the bottom of the screen we have a chat room. I can type a message in here if I want, and then I can send a message to other users who might be logged in at the same time. This does support multiple users. You can have many users at the same time, but of course only one person in charge of transmitting at a time. You can trade around transmitting permissions with other registered users, so that is a possibility. And on some stations there is also a possibility of using a test button. Here, I'll have to find that. I'll have to get my mouse over these buttons so they all show up. And if I hit the test button, then when I hit transmit, my signal will not go out on the air. I will still hear the receiver, but I can talk to any other users who are connected. And I don't have to use the chat. We can just talk by VoIP. As long as the test button is enabled here, and you can see that it's shown highlighted in this orange color. Here we have the transmit button, so if I click that I'm going to transmit. I won't do that right now. The TXT button is used on some radios, and it does happen to be used on this Kenwood TS480 radio for tuning. So instead of a tune button, there's the TXT button, and if I would press that, the radio would tune, send out a tune signal, and just press the TXT button a short period of time. to send out a little bit of RF to tune the external LDG auto tuner that's in use at both stations, W0ZSW and W0EQO. After that, you can throw out your call sign by transmitting, because you have put out some RF on the air, so to be legal you should do that. When you identify using the Handiham remote stations, we would like you to use your call sign and then via whatever remote you're using. So on this one, I'm using the W0ZSW Handiham Club of Minnesota station. So if I transmit, I'm going to say, this is WA0TDA through W0ZSW. And I can clarify that. Let's say I'm checking into a net or checking in with another group or whatever, group of friends maybe. I would explain that I'm using this remote-based station, and the reason for that is that it can be confusing if you live in an area where it might be very different from Minnesota. So for example, let's say I'm working a station on 20 meters, and let's say I'm a W4 station and I'm in Florida, and I'm working a station on 20 meters, and the station is in California, and the California station hears my identification as a W4 station, looks up my call in QRZ, and then points his or her beam at the Florida QTH that shows up in the database. But in reality, if I don't say that I'm using a remote-based station in Minnesota, that beam is going to be pointed in the wrong direction. So just to clarify information about propagation and location and so forth, it is good to mention that you are using a remote-based station. The radio has two VFOs. The main VFO is going to be over here on the right, 7.195.5. And the secondary VFO, VFO-B, over on the left, 3.8, and so forth. And I can make A equal B, like so, with that button. I can flip the VFOs from the main area to the secondary area with the AB flip. I have an attenuator that I can use, a preamp for the receive, noise blanker, noise reduction 1 and 2. Kenwood users are familiar with those buttons on the radio. And then leaving the buttons, we go to the drop-down menus, and this is lower sideband right up at the top. But if I click on the arrow, I see that I have the option of AM, CW, lower sideband, upper sideband, FM. And this radio, incidentally, is capable of operating CW. The way you do it is you either use an external device with an interface to a USB port, and there are schematics to do those, or you can buy a little device that plugs into the USB port on your radio, or on your computer I mean, and you can use that to send CW with a paddle. Or you can put CW into this box, so I can just write something in the box and then send that as a CW signal. And I am able to choose a CW speed with a slider. These are called sliders over here. I can change the CW filter width and several other characteristics of the radio. The transmit meter will show up right in this area here under the secondary VFO, and it can show you the power as you transmit, but I prefer to have the SWR here so that I know that when I use the TXT button briefly that I can see it's tuning. It'll usually say high SWR as it starts to tune, and then it'll settle down to like maybe 1.2 or 1.3 to 1. So that's the transmit meter setting. Quick memory I just leave off. You can use it if you want. There's a receive equalization. You can have it off, or maybe high boost is usually pretty good, or F-pass. Those are the ones that I use. CW method, you can choose from normal or Farnsworth. And if you're a CW person, you'll know what that means. The Farnsworth is usually preferred. And you can choose either off, slow, or fast AGC, depending on the mode of operation and the conditions and your preference. So that's the basic interface here. Over on the far left, we see the numpad, and I can put my mouse over this numpad and I can enter whatever I want. So let's say 1, 0, dot, enter, and that takes me to WWV, and WWV happens to be one of the frequencies in the radio's memory, so it does show up 10 megahertz AM WWV. I can see what's in the radio's memories in the lower left-hand corner. We're kind of defaulted to the chat room here, but I can go to the Memories tab down here, and I can just change this around by double-clicking, like so, and just moving around and looking at different frequencies that are here in the radio's memories. So let's say we wanted to go to the 14.3 upper sideband frequency. Double click on that, and I've changed both the mode and the frequency, so now I'm on 14.3 upper sideband. So if I wanted to go to, let's say, an AM frequency on 75 meters, I have that available, and the mode is already changed for me, and I decide, no, I don't want to be on AM. I'm going to just choose another memory frequency, and that puts me on lower sideband on 3.925, and I can change these around like so. I just put my mouse over the figure that I want to change, and I use the mouse wheel to go up and down. So that works out pretty easily for tuning. There are some other things that I can change on the radio. The RF power on this radio, it is the HX model, is up to 200 watts. If I wanted to operate QRP CW, I could go ahead and put that down, let's say under 20 watts, and maybe that would be good. For example, if I'm on 14.07, enter, so let's go to USB. Okay, so now I know this is a frequency where PSK31 signals are going to be found, and what I need to do is get on the proper frequency, check the mode, and this may not be immediately apparent because you have to do a little scrolling down to find the RF power, but you're going to want to turn that RF power down to an appropriate level for the digital mode that you're planning to operate. That's a little bit of introduction to this RCForb software interface. There is going to be a new interface coming out. It is in development now, and you can check out the alpha version if you want, but if you're a new user, I would really recommend that you stick with the current version. I have a couple of corgis here who are helping me with the video, so that's what that barking and noise is in the background. Okay, there is also a feature, DX spots, and you can connect to the server of your choice. That's listed here. You put in your call sign, and you can have DX spots here. You can also do some spotting, so that's a nice feature. Anytime, even though you are connected to a radio, you can go back to the lobby, and you can look around the lobby if you want, but you really do need to disconnect from the radio using the traditional X out of it up here and close out of the radio if you want to do that. Anytime you're transmitting, you're going to see a green waveform show up here. Let's go to 10 megahertz again. 10.0, enter. Okay, now when I did that, you can see there's a waveform showing up here. Now, of course, I'm not going to transmit on the WWV frequency, but I can pause this received signal. Let's say somebody comes into the room and wants to talk to me. I don't want to do anything with the radio. I just want to mute the receiver. So I just hit the pause button. And when I do hit the pause button, the waveform will go away and go flat. And then I have to hit the play button again for it to come back. I have a volume control here. And basically this is controlling the receiver volume. Then I have the mic volume over here. And this is going to give you a waveform that you can check out. And if the waveform looks pretty good and it's all in green, you're doing okay. If it turns into red, then you're overdriving. So it's a kind of a try it and see what happens type of thing. Let's just get off of this here for a second so there's no noise in the background. You do have some other things up here. There's a help menu, but it really leads you to the support forums and the place where you can go to the bug reports. In the About, you'll find the version of the software that you're using. Under this Windows menu, you can save the layout. You can show activity logs to see who has been on and what they've been doing. CW keying, DX spots, memories, number pad. All of these things are optional. Let's say I never use the number pad, so I could get rid of that. If I click that, then you see the radio recenters. The number pad is now gone. But I like the number pad, so I'm going to have it back here. And then it's available for me to direct enter frequencies. If you are a blind user, or if you have any need of audio voice settings, there is a text-to-speech feature under the Options menu. And I have it enabled here, and this shows that it can read the frequency, read the mode, read the buttons, read the drop-down, read the sliders, set frequency, do ask to tune, toggle transmit, and so forth, all with keystroke commands. So that's kind of nice. There's Elecraft K3 emulation. You can read more about that in the manual. HRD IP server emulation. This is for Ham Radio Deluxe server emulation. There's a control device setup if you're using some kind of a control device. And you can check for updates or flash player updates, since the underpinnings of this software, it is written with Flash. So those are some things that that you'll maybe use later on when you get more familiar with the software. Let's see, what else can I tell you about it? Here, upload amateur radio license. What this does is it leads you to a link on RemoteHams.com where you can upload a PDF copy of your license or a picture of your license or whatever you happen to have to show that you are indeed a licensed amateur radio operator. And this is the reason this is important, is that station owners, if they receive a request from you that you want transmit privileges on their station, they're going to want to check that license. And I usually check multiple ways, including the FCC database, but it is helpful to have this image of your license so that I can see that you are a valid licensed amateur radio operator. Obviously, owners of the stations are responsible, at least in part, for the correct and proper operation of the station in conformance with best operating practices. So that means that we are going to do some checking about just who we let use the station. You can tune the station around, most of them anyway, without any special permissions, without even an amateur radio license. Some stations will require that even to tune you will have to have club membership or something like that. Some stations are club members members only, some are not. Some are just individual stations that people put out there for you to use. And so it just depends on the station. But if you do use this upload amateur radio license, it does help the station owner find out that you are licensed, and they can take a look at that copy of your license. If you are a new potential user and you do not have transmit privileges on a given station, you can click transmit and you will be put on a list on the host software side of the system for that particular station. And when the operator of that station, or the station owner I should say, takes a look at that list from time to time, he'll see that you're on there waiting transmit privileges, and then he can check you out and either give you transmit privileges or just ignore the request. I recommend that you try to contact the station owner directly rather than by that method. Now you can use that method, and you can also send me an email, for example, if you'd like to contact me and let's say you want to use station WA0TDA, which is my ICOM IC7200. Let's say that one's on the air, you want to use it, you can go ahead and click that transmit, but I may not check that list on the host software for a week or two, or sometimes even more if I get busy. But if you send an email to wa0tda@awrl.net, or whatever the owner's email address is, you can usually find the owner on qrz.com with their email address, then just mention that you want transmit capability, and you might provide a reason. Let's say you're traveling, or you can't put up an antenna because of your homeowners association, or you're moving and you'd like to be able to get on the air and check into a net in the meantime, or whatever. It sometimes helps to have a reason. But you don't particularly have to. You might just be interested in using the station. And a lot of us are pretty open-minded about granting those permissions. One thing that I ask is that it's only USA licensed amateurs that are allowed transmission capability on these Handiham stations, and that's because of FCC regulations as they're currently interpreted. We do have some DX stations who do get on and use these stations with transmit, but they also hold USA FCC issued licenses, so that's why they can get on. So also you have to have general class or above. This is primarily an HF system, so that's what we require. Even though technicians do have some transmit privileges on the HF bands, just the higher level of experience and knowledge, I feel that you should at least have your general. And that again will depend on the station owner. So it's not the same for every remote-based station. You may or may not get a response back if your request transmit, but many of us will share our stations simply because we want to see activity on the air. We want to see the bands in use. We want to see people who live in apartments or condos, or who are traveling. Maybe have to sell their equipment, and they might get into the nursing home or something like that. Those kinds of things. They're really not able to put up antennas and have stations of their own. Well, this is a really good way to stay on the air, stay in touch with your friends, and really still remain very active in amateur radio. There is no charge to use anybody's station unless they specifically say so, and there are some what I call kind of super stations that do have those kind of regulations where there's a certain amount that you have to pay to be a member of that particular club and get permission. but those are pretty rare. Most of the stations on the list will allow you to use the station at least to tune around and oftentimes to transmit, and do so with no charge. You might also find that some stations do have antennas with other controls on them, such as rotators, and those kinds of things can be controlled with this software. Now the W0ZSW and W0EQO stations both have wire antennas, and therefore there's no rotator to control, so none of that stuff shows up. In the Windows selection, where we chose, for example, the number pad and DX spots and memories and things like that showing up, you'll also have amp control if there's an amplifier, rotator control. There might be an external antenna switch. So if those things are available on some stations, then they will show up, and they will show up usually over on the right hand side of the interface here. I can't show you on this radio because it doesn't have that particular feature. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video of the RCForb software. You can get more information on RemoteHams.com, including a user guide for both the host and the client software. This is the client software. It's a really good program. It does a lot of things, and it is under active current development, and you should consider supporting the RemoteHams.com developers either by putting your station on the air for others to use, and possibly by donating to the software development as well. Another thing you can do is promote the RemoteHams.com website, and you might even want to buy the external keyer device. This is a little external device. In fact, you can plug in your microphone and your key, Morse code key, to it, and then plug that into a USB port on your tablet or on your computer, and you can key using your regular keyer, or you can talk using the push to talk on your regular microphone from that device. All really handy stuff. There is an Android app. Let's get this in front of the, there it is, RCForb client. This is available in the Play Store, and if I go ahead and connect to this, I get a nice interface that's not quite as full-featured as the one on Windows, but by gosh, you can use this on the go. It works great with mobile data, and you can control the radio. You maybe put your own radio on with the host software, which is also free from RemoteHams.com, and then you can control your own radio with your Android smartphone. And I know there are some people who are going to ask, so I'll tell you right now, there is no iOS version, at least not yet, and I don't know if one is going to be developed. But there are many inexpensive Android tablets and other kinds of devices out on the market for not very much money. They work great on Wi-Fi, and you can have a really good option to use your station remotely with just a little Android tablet, probably under $100. I think some are even under $50. So this is a way to stay on the air when you're on the road. It's a way to help other people get on the air if they can't get an antenna, or maybe they live in a restricted type of situation where they can't get a radio up, and they'll have access to many stations around the world. So just looking here, I have some Italian stations, Spain, Switzerland, United Kingdom, of course quite a few in the United States, Canada, Poland, Switzerland, and these are all on the air right now, or available at least online, and they're something that can allow you many fun hours of exploring, looking at different propagation conditions around the world and so forth. Okay, this is Pat Tice, WA0TDA. You can reach me at WA0TDA, Whiskey Alpha Zero, Tango Delta Alpha at ARRL.net. Thanks, and have a great day.